Inter Miami turned in a good performance, but it did not get a good result, and the playoff chase is practically over now. Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of Miami Total Football Radio, aka Miami Total Football Radio. I am half of your co-hosting team on the second podcast this week. My name is Franco Panizo, and joining me is Steve El Primo Brenner. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm not too bad, mate. Probably better than Phil Neville and the players are feeling today after, Tuesday night, Wednesday night even in Atlanta. Disappointing. I thought they played well. We'll get into it. Disappointing result. The season's pretty much over now, barring a miracle. I'm sure Phil Neville, when we speak to him tomorrow, Friday, will say they've still got to keep going, but he knows that that's that really, and it's a shame. But they haven't been good enough, and I think he will accept that. And we have to move on to next season, but it doesn't, take away the sort of disappointment of not making it this time around, really. A bit of a failure all round, which is unfortunate. It was a good game. It was a decent game, I thought. It was lively, for sure. It always is when there's so much on the line. So, Don Garber, if you're listening, promotion and relegation is something you should definitely do. And that's another conversation.
It actually did feel like a playoff game to me at times. There was a lot of tension behind it because of what it meant for both teams. Atlanta United is still looking to cement their spot in the playoffs, and Inter Miami was trying to pull off a late miracle, but obviously with the disappointing 2-1 defeat, it's pretty much done and dusted. We will talk about what the result means, what the playoff standings are, because Inter Miami is still alive mathematically. The team is not dead yet, although the grave has begun to get dug. So we'll touch into that. We'll touch on that. We'll touch on this upcoming game against New York City FC, how Inter Miami should approach it. And obviously this is the second pod in just a matter of a few days, maybe 2-3 days, since we last recorded the pod earlier in the week. So we're going to try to get through this in a quick fashion because there's not a whole lot of time between when we record and the next game. This is not a traditional Saturday night game coming up. It's on Halloween Eve, and it's being played on Saturday afternoon. So less time for you listeners to hear this pod before the game kicks off. So, Steve, let's not waste any time. Let's get to it. Okay, Steve, so as we mentioned, Inter Miami went to Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia, and it suffered a demoralizing 2-1 defeat on Wednesday night, a game in which Inter Miami had the lead and initially took the lead through a Gonzalo Higuain penalty kick in the first half, but 2 goals from Atlanta United, the first from Luis Araujo, and then the second from Joseph Martinez. That undoes Inter Miami, and they suffer their first loss in 3 games. It drops them to 11th place in the Eastern Conference, 6 points shy of the final playoff spot in the East, with 2 games left on the year. So, in theory, Inter Miami could make up that ground, but like we said, we'll dissect all of that in just a little bit. This was the lineup that Phil Neville went with. He caught you and I by surprise because we both thought he was going to go with the 4-man backline. We said that on the pod earlier in the week with Jose. But they went with 5 at the back in this one, and this was the starting 11. Nick Marsman in goal. Kelvin Leerdam and Breck Shea were your wingbacks on the right and left, respectively. Your center back trio from right to left were Leandro Gonzalez Pires, Nicolas Figal, and Christian McCoon. Your midfield tandem was Gregory and Jay Chapman. And up top, the front 3 from right to left were Lewis Morgan, Gonzalo Higuain, and Rodolfo Pizarro. Now, let's just jump right into what it means for the playoffs. Before we dive into the game and our takeaways, let's just dive into what it means for the playoffs, because I know that a lot of people have asked questions as to what the standing is, what the situation is, because Inter Miami is still mathematically alive. And how is that possible? How is that the case? Well, because Inter Miami is only 6 points shy of the final playoff spot, in theory, they could win these last 2 games. And DC United, which is in 7th place right now, could lose the last 2 games. Inter Miami would then be tied with DC United in terms of points, in terms of the first tiebreaker, which is overall wins this season. But then that next tiebreaker is where it really gets difficult because it's goal differential. Right now, DC United is at +2, Inter Miami is at -16. So they're not mathematically out, but it's pretty much over at this point. It's pretty much over. And that's, that's without taking into consideration that there are other teams ahead of Inter Miami that if they just pick up one more win, they would also knock out Inter Miami from playoff contention. So it's
I think an easier way to explain it is it's not going to happen. I think that's probably the best way. In theory, I could win the lottery, or I could be, I could play for England in Qatar next year in the World Cup. But in reality, that's not going to happen, and unfortunately, this isn't going to either.
Well, I just wanted to break down the different scenarios or why Inter Miami's not officially eliminated yet, but it'll probably come this Saturday. This Saturday will probably officially put that final nail in the coffin for Inter Miami, and it'll come on Halloween Eve. So I don't know if that's fitting or not fitting, but anyway, Steve, what was your biggest takeaway from this match, from this defeat for Inter Miami?
They should have won. Great start. I know you pointed out expertly that Higuain potentially was offside when he missed that great chance early on, but they had a few other good chances. Higuain, Lewis Morgan. Eventually they got the. I think Lewis Morgan had a great chance just before he won the penalty, put away the penalty, and then fair play to Atlanta. They had a real go second half. Barco and Martinez were brilliant, terrorized Inter Miami, but even so, even at 2-1, you could see the couple of goals coming. But Robbie Robinson, two great chances at the end, a header, and then I think a volley that he put over. Both that he really should have done better with, and that's the difference. You've just got to take your chances. I don't think there was too much wrong in the performance. I thought they did great. I thought it was there was something on the line. There was a real intensity to the match. A lot of fouls. I was watching I don't know what other people were watching, but I had the Atlanta feed, so I had Atlanta-based commentators on. A guy, Kevin Egan, used to work for beIN, and he kept on talking about how many fouls on Barco. I think he got to about 12 or 13. It was like an MLS record. It was tying for an MLS record, one of the two. But 5 yellow cards. Yeah, it was intense because there was a lot on the line. Even a draw, I think, would have, it still would have been good enough regardless. But they deserve something from the game. But they're just going to miss out. And as we said last week or last time, it's because of those bad streaks. You just can't afford to do that in a league that's so tight, and they're just going to miss out when really a couple of wins and they probably would have been okay. So same old story, but they just didn't take their chance. I didn't think they played that badly, to be honest.
So I want to touch on what you just said about the referee and the fouls called in this one, because look, I'm not someone that likes to really talk about the referees in a game unless they have a completely blown call or a controversial call, but I did think in this one, at times, and the word in Spanish, or at least in Peru, is called localista. When the referee, it's used to describe a referee that officiates a game as kind of a homer. Because I thought the discrepancy in fouls at one point during the stretch of the game was really, really in Atlanta United's favor and not really in Inter Miami's favor. I didn't think it was that balanced. And look, you could say that Inter Miami was doing a lot of fouling, and that can happen in the course of the game. But I don't know. There were some fouls that I was like, is that worth a yellow? Is that worth a foul? I don't know. I did feel he was a bit localista, a bit of a homer, and maybe playing to the environment. And I don't think it's a conscious thing. I think it could be a subconscious thing. When you've got the home crowd and all those things that come into play there. So I don't know. I thought there were points in that second half, especially where maybe some calls went unfairly against Inter Miami's way, but anyway, that's not why they lost this game. Like you said, the biggest takeaway for me is the lack of efficiency up front. That is one of the biggest elements in soccer, one of the biggest elements in football is efficiency. Putting the ball into the back of the net with the chances you do create, and Inter Miami just did not do that in this one. They played well. They had a good game. They had a pretty good game, but they did not get the result because they could not put the ball into the back of the net. And it's a bit different than the recurring theme from a lot of this season, because over the course of a lot of this season, Inter Miami hasn't created all that much. In this one, they created plenty. 11 shots, 6 on target, but only 1 goal. And that 1 goal came off a penalty kick. So that lack of efficiency up front, that wastefulness with the chances, that was what undid Inter Miami. We will talk about and touch on Phil Neville's formation change in the second half, because the game winner comes immediately after he changes the formation. But that's not why Inter Miami lost this game. They lost this game because they did not put the ball into the back of the net. They played a good game. They had their chances. They defended well for the most part. Like you said, a draw would have been, a respectable result. I mean, not the result they wanted, but would have been a respectable result based on what we saw on the balance of play. And Inter Miami could have even won this one because when they were up 1-0, Gonzalo Higuain has a chance to make it 2-0 off of a sublime cross from Kelvin Leerdam, and he can't direct it into the back of the net. He shoots it too close to Brad Guzan, and the Atlanta United goalkeeper makes the save. Let's start, though, with the formation change because, like I mentioned before, you and I both said in the last pod that released on Wednesday. We're recording this Thursday, so this one will be released Friday. I'm getting all my days confused. But anyway, we both thought that Inter Miami would go with 4 at the back. They went with 5. Now, some people might be critical of that, say they didn't go for it, that they played a little bit more defensive-minded. And look, they did take a more defensive posture, but they were still pretty good in that first half for me. They still created things. They were still the better team, I think, during the first 45 minutes. What did you think about the formation change, and what did you think about how it impacted the performance?
Well, I mean, they had a bit of success the last time they played Atlanta, didn't they, when they played like that? And I think that must have been in the back of his mind. I think
absolutely.
They didn't take their chances. It was working. They play well, deserved to go ahead. 1 up at the break. I mean, that was it. That was the chance. I think that they came on strong second half for sure. A lot of pressure. Yeah, and it started to get a bit bitty, but on the whole, I thought they did well. I thought the fullbacks, Shea and Leerdam, I thought they did pretty well. Lewis Morgan was decent. Gregore was getting stuck in. I hate that pitch. It's horrible. You can see them covered in those black sort of pellet things that are just on those AstroTurf pitches. It's horrible. But he would have been pleased. They would have been pleased going in at half time. They would have been delighted. Absolutely delighted. They quieted the crowd. They were in control, had great chances. And then, it fell apart. But they would have been super annoyed that they didn't at least get a point because they had some great chances at the end, even when they looked like they weren't going to get in it at all. And that is ultimately the difference. And Barco and Martinez, their 2 star guys, came to the party and, dominated and really got in amongst it and were lively and caused them a lot of problems. And Higuain had a bit of an off night, and Pizarro didn't, I'm sure you're going to tell me he was amazing, but they're different players.
Shots fired.
But their DPs really stood up and were ultimately the difference, and Miami's weren't, and that's been the way the whole season, isn't it?
You also didn't mention that Luis Araujo, not Araujo, it's tempting to say Araujo because that's how it's spelled, but he's Brazilian, so it's Araujo. That third DP, he was the difference maker. Joseph Martinez might have scored the game winner, but Luis Araujo was the difference maker because he scores the equalizing goal off the free kick, which we'll touch on in a second, and then he assists on the game winner for Joseph Martinez with a great pass into space that the Venezuelan striker raced onto. He got in behind Leandro Gonzalez-Pires on that play. But
Barco's only 22. That is the kind of player that they want. Young, hungry player like that, but a top DP. I mean, I thought he was great. I thought he was really good, super busy. That's the kind of player they need, isn't it?
Well, he was good yesterday, but he hasn't been great over the spell of his MLS career. So I don't know if that's exactly the type of player they need. Anyway, just to I got you. Just to stick onto the Inter Miami performance, because after the game, Phil Neville talked about just the inability to put the ball into the back of the net, and he didn't. Well, I guess he named names over the course of his just description of the game, and he touched on Gonzalo Higuain's miss on that one look in the second half. He also touched on Robbie Robinson's contributions late on. But then later on, when he talked about the game in more general terms, he didn't directly say Gonzalo Higuain or Rodolfo Pizarro, but my interpretation of what he was saying was that, he was not happy with what they gave out because the DPs, right? He was comparing Atlanta's DPs and how they put the ball into the back of the net. And, it sounded like, and I read it as him just being very critical and being upset with the production he got from the likes of Gonzalo Higuain and Rodolfo Pizarro. I mean, he probably was a bit frustrated with Robbie Robinson too because Robbie Robinson had a glorious opportunity, but Robbie Robinson, we can't hold him to the same standard that we hold Higuain and Pizarro because they are the designated players. They get paid millions of dollars. Robinson does not. He's in his second year as a professional. So I do think that he was frustrated with the DPs and their inability to step up and carry this team over the finish line. Remember, after this most recent win, the 5-1 victory over the weekend against the FC Cincinnati, which Inter Miami won by a lopsided margin, Phil Neville said, when Gonzalo Higuain plays well, the team plays well. And in this one, Gonzalo Higuain did not play that well. And I still thought the team played well, but it wasn't enough to get the victory. But Steve, what did you think about Gonzalo Higuain's overall performance? He gets the goal on the penalty kick, doesn't finish another opportunity he has later on, but he showed some things during the run of play. But overall, what did you think?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did okay. He always looked, the most likely to score. Just it wasn't his best night. You could tell he was getting frustrated, kicking out. There was a few little tussles towards the end. He just needs help. He can't do it all on his own. I think that's what Phil Neville touched on the other night when he said that the pressure of carrying the team as a DP has affected him, all that kind of stuff. He can't do it on his own. He can't. He needs other guys to help out and share the load. And there were some okay performances. No one, but they just he needed help. He needed like Barco and Martinez together. They ran the show, and it wasn't. He needed others to sort of start pulling their weight. For Pizarro or something like that. And they kind of went missing really just when they needed them. But those two chances at the end, the header at Robbie Robinson, that's it, man. That's it. That's where it's at. If we would have put one of those away, then it could have been a bit of a different story. And no one could have really begrudged them a point, I don't think. But that's the difference.
Look, if you have to put percentages of responsibility on players, Gonzalo Higuain shoulders the most. Maybe Pizarro's right there next in line, although he didn't have any clear-cut chances like Robbie Robinson did. But look, Lewis Morgan also, I didn't think had a great game. I think he wasn't at his sharpest. Maybe that's due to fatigue after playing the last few games, because he came out in the 61st minute. If I'm not mistaken, he was the first Inter Miami substitute, or player substituted. So maybe he had some heavy legs there, but he didn't look his sharpest. And he also wasn't great. He does draw the penalty kick after Breccia, clips in a ball in behind. And Brad Guzan fouls Lewis Morgan. Wasn't initially called. It went to VAR. But overall, I just didn't think Lewis Morgan had a great game. But, the attack still left something to be desired. Even though this game was better than what we've seen from a performance standpoint for much of the year, it still left something to be desired, especially with the finishing there in the final third. I know I asked you about the formation. I don't think I chimed in on the formation change. I agree that it worked, and he definitely, Phil Neville definitely went back into his memory bank and said, look, when we played with 5 at the back last time around, we were competitive, and maybe we could have gotten that game if it wasn't for a controversial call. So I can imagine that was the thinking. He didn't want to expose the team completely or maybe overly in the opening half if he had played with 4 at the back. Because once he switched out of the 5-man backline, once he pulled Nicolas Figal in the second half when the game was 1-1, immediately after that, a minute after that, Inter Miami's playing with 4 at the back now. There's more spaces to exploit, and Atlanta United scores the go-ahead goal and the winner. So I think that was along the lines of his thinking, and I don't begrudge him for changing the formation at the start of the game. I also don't begrudge him for changing the formation halfway through the second half, because a 1-1 result was not good enough for Inter Miami. They needed to win given the situation that they were in. They had to take more risks there, and with risks come the potential to give up goals, and that's what happened, unfortunately, for Inter Miami, and they just couldn't find enough at the other end, which obviously, again, a lot of it goes on Gonzalo Higuain, who I thought had an okay game, as did most of the team, but just not enough from him on this one. He's the big money man. He's the one that has to deliver, and he did not do that in this one, but he's not solely to blame. There's also, you can also point the finger at Pizarro, you can point the finger at Lewis Morgan, you can point the finger at Robbie Robinson, the attackers that also have to help contribute with either assists or goals. They obviously did not do that. So switching gears just to Robbie Robinson's performance, because in this one, it's been an extension of what we've seen from him, especially as of late. Wasteful in front of goal, inefficient, not putting the ball into the back of the net. He had that glorious header. And look, at that point, that header makes it 2-2. Inter Miami still probably doesn't win the game, although they could have a chance to pull it out late. But he's got to put that ball in the back of the net, because at this point, maybe his confidence is low. It's possible, but I'm starting to really question his fit in this team longer term, because if he has that much or that many issues putting the ball into the back of the net. Maybe he needs a different scenario or a different setting, and Inter Miami maybe could get something if they trade him within the league, or I don't know. I'm starting to have no questions
about him. He was your star guy, wasn't he? He was the star guy up until a few. He was the one that's emerging, and what a player. So now you're getting rid of him.
Well, I mean, what do you think? Hasn't been playing well as of late.
So yeah, right. No, I mean, look, you've got to hope that he will learn from some stuff like this. Big chances missed. That could have been the difference. That was the difference last night. If he should have scored, definitely the second one, the shot over, at least get it on target. But with the header out from 6 yards, it sort of was straight out Guzan. But she's got to score. But
you're right. You have to get power behind that. You have the whole goal essentially at your mercy. Just get power behind it and head it straight. I don't know why he headed it down, but I think it's
head it down. So to hit the bounce, and it bounces up. But
yeah, but that takes power off of the ball, and it's easier to save, especially when he doesn't get enough placement on it. And I have questions about his ruthlessness and his clinical, how clinical he is in the final third. And I don't know, man. I haven't been the biggest Robbie Robinson guy from what I've seen dating back to last season. This year he showed a little bit more on the wing, but I still don't see enough. And I know Inter Miami raves about him. I know Phil Neville raves about him. But I personally, Franco Panizo, I'll put my name to it, I just don't see enough from him to say I see what they see in terms of his future. Because look, let's look at his stats. He has 4 goals this season. 4 goals. Is that a great year for an attacking player? I know he's been injured. I know he's been out of the lineup at times, etc., etc. But is 4 goals in this season all that good?
No, not at all. No. I think he's definitely progressed this season. Interesting. It's a bit of a curveball, really. If they want to, they have to going to get rid of some players. He's pretty sellable, I think. They could probably do some business. Just depends he's probably on a relatively lowish wage, I would have thought. But and his transfer, would he command a big transfer fee? I don't know. I'm not sure. He's still very young and very raw, but I don't know. I think there's probably other places in the squad which they could probably sharpen up a bit and they could keep him. Because I think he was definitely a good player. I think he's got he's got some talent. It's just that's the difference between the big good players and the great players, isn't it? You just got to take your chances.
Look, if I were Chris Henderson, I would explore the possibility of trading him because he's still young. That's his stock is still relatively high, probably, right? They could probably get something out of him, like you mentioned. But I don't see enough from him. I just don't see enough from him, and his continued inability to consistently put the ball into the back of the net, despite having some good chances. Remember the last Atlanta United game up in Atlanta, he had a glorious look, and he botches that one, shoots it wide of the frame despite being wide open from about, 12 yards, 13 yards out. I just don't see enough. And look, these are his stats for the season. 22 games played, 16 starts, 4 goals, 0 assists in 1,310 minutes. Not a good haul for me for an attacking player. He doesn't even get assists, so that to me, it's just a very limited player. And again, I would look into trading him if possible this offseason. But, Inter Miami has said they're high on him, so maybe they keep him for another year. But, I would explore the possibility. Steve, before we put a bow on this game, we have to talk about the formation change in the second half. Because, like I said before, at least once, maybe twice, when Inter Miami switched into that 4-2-3-1, the goal happens immediately, the game-winning goal. Inter Miami had already given up a goal on a free kick. Is there anything Inter Miami could have done differently? Is there anything that they could have done to avoid that game-winning goal? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, they needed to go for the win, didn't they? And they were still creating enough chances. I don't think it was an option just to trying to hang back. It was a game they had to win, so they had to be a bit open. I just thought Atlanta kind of second half they bossed it pretty much, didn't they? Once they got level, that was it. They were Miami were on the back foot for long periods, just trying to survive, and then they scored again, and then that you thought that was it. But as we keep saying, they did create more chances and they did have opportunities to definitely draw level. If you scored one of those and then it's 2-2, then you just never know. They had to go for the win. They knew that, so I don't think it was an option where they could have just soaked it up for 15 minutes and then it's difficult in the cold light of day. You think, maybe Phil Neville's thinking, maybe we should have held tight for 10. I don't think it doesn't work like that when you're in the middle of it. he would have wanted that he could have seen that they were, competing well with Atlanta and that they were creating chances. So you're going to have to just keep it going and hope you're going to nick one. And, that's the game, isn't it?
Yeah, so I don't blame Phil Neville, again, on this one. The circumstances, the situation called for him to have to be more aggressive, and he tried to take chances. It's just unfortunate for Inter Miami, but maybe it's just a sign of the team that they are and how poor of a team that they are, because if they could have kept it 1-1 and gotten their rhythm in that 4-2-3-1 formation, maybe that allows them to score a goal or create better chances with Federico Higuain on the field. But the fact that the goal comes within seconds after the formation change, it puts Inter Miami at a disadvantage, puts them in a hole, and now they're playing catch up, and obviously it's a tough challenge there. So it would have been nice to see them be able to put out that fire and try to keep it at 1-1 for another 5-10 minutes to see what they could have done with the game level and a more attacking posture, but just didn't get the opportunity to see that. They give up the goal immediately. Last thing to touch on, because we didn't touch on it, was the free kick goal, the equalizing goal from Luis Araujo. Anything there you want to add? Anything you think they could have done differently? Maybe they could have had one of those players that lays behind the wall, because this goal, this free kick, it's not exactly on the pitch, not on the turf or on the ground. It was a little bit above that, but it goes in between, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be mistaken here because I had to rewatch the play 10 to 15 times on the replay last night on the rewatch. I think it goes in between Leandro Gonzalez Pires and Jay Chapman, if I'm not mistaken. And it goes in between their feet, like a little hole in the wall, the slightest hole in the wall, and it surprises Nick Marsman and goes into the back of the net. Anything you think they could have done differently there?
Well, they shouldn't have jumped. Yeah, I mean it's a good ploy by the free kick taker. Just where you don't really see that very often. That's why they have in Europe a lot. They made the point in the commentary that Messi was doing it the other week. Just lying down the floor to make sure that if it does do that, it's going to hit him, which is not a great job, is it? Like asking Lionel Messi to lie down and just hope he gets smashed in the face by a free kick.
Well, they usually have their back turned to it. They usually don't put their face first towards the ball. They actually usually turn their back to it. So they'll hit their back or the back of their head or their bum. Their bum, English word.
Yes, on the bum. But you don't often see that when he just sneaks under the wall. It's just instinctive to jump, isn't it? It makes it look a little bit foolish. But it was a nice strike. But yeah, shouldn't. They'll be disappointed, I think, as a defensive unit that crept in really. Although Marsman's sort of blindsided because he thinks that's where the wall's going to hit it. So the wall didn't do its job, unfortunately. But it's a harsh one to take. But it's just it didn't do its job, did it?
It's a very disappointing goal to give up because of how it comes. It comes off a set piece, and it's not even a great free kick. It's not a quality free kick that's going to make a highlight reel. Just happened to get in between the hole and the wall. Like you said, the wall did not do its job. The wall is called the wall for a reason. You're supposed to stick together, stay tight, and prevent those shots from going through. If it goes up and over and it goes under the crossbar, then you tip your hat. But to go through you, that's disappointing. And I know Phil Neville had some beef with the play that led to that free kick, because I think even Breck Shea said in the post-game press conference he thought that the initial foul was from Barco on Kelvin Leerdam as opposed to Kelvin Leerdam fouling Barco. And I know Phil Neville said that he was upset that Inter Miami was playing with 10 men at that time before the free kick when that foul happened, because Nicolas Figal, I believe he was bleeding. I don't know if it was from his finger or from his head. He was bleeding, so he had to be taken to the sideline per the rules, and had to change out of his jersey and had to clean up the cut and had to be wrapped up before he could get back on the field. And then apparently that took longer than Inter Miami would have liked. So they were playing with 10 men, and that obviously takes away some defensive solidity from them. It leads to the free kick, and obviously then comes the equalizing goal. But anyway, a loss for Inter Miami. We'll leave it there. We'll wrap up this segment. We'll come back and preview this weekend's game against New York City FC. How will Inter Miami go about that one? We'll talk about that after this.
The team was fantastic. I thought the collective system, the effort of the players, the belief of the players to win the game of football was just as good as it's been, I think, on the road. And ultimately, it comes down to what I was told on day one in this league, is that goals win matches and your big players need to stand up in big matches. And congratulations to Atlanta. Martinez Arajo stood up, put their chances away, and we're really disappointed. And it's even though I've been told it's mathematically not impossible, it feels it at this moment in time.
Okay, Primo, Inter Miami returns home for its Drive Pink Stadium 2021 finale on Halloween Eve on Saturday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. against New York City FC. What kind of game should we expect? New York City FC is coming off of a win on Wednesday night, so they'll have some confidence behind them. They're still looking to solidify what place they'll be in the playoffs, although it looks like they are going to make it. But what should we expect from this game on Saturday afternoon?
Well, NYCFC, looking good now, 4th place. They've been on a decent run, but nice to see Marcelo Claret, formerly of Inter Miami, of David Beckham's alleged or Jorge Mas's right-hand man during a load of during the dark days of the club potentially never actually happening, tweeting his support for NYCFC. Nice little dig, proving in the cold light of day that they obviously had a very big fallout. Certainly him and Jorge Mas. The parts of the front office really fell out with him. We never really got the story behind that, but all very strange. So, yeah, he was reveling in Inter Miami's misery, which was not the most edifying of ways to present himself. But there you go. So,
were you surprised to see that? Sorry to interrupt you, but were you surprised to see a tweet like that? Because the tweet is congratulating NYCFC. But it's a screenshot of NYCFC's tweet talking about their score on Wednesday. But he also included the tweet underneath that said Inter Miami lost, right? That I believe that's how the tweet that he put out went. So
it proves how they clearly had a very bad fallout, and he's clearly very upset about it, isn't he? Otherwise he wouldn't be acting like that. So from what I was hearing in the club, there was a big fallout in the front office. Which sort of disintegrated his relationships. I mean, he was the one, wasn't he, that allegedly mentioned to MLS in the first place that there was a problem with Matuidi. So that goes a long way back, and I'm sure there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that will probably never come out. So clearly there was a huge fallout there, and he's absolutely loving it right now.
For clarity's sake, since we are media members, he tweeted out "Bravo" clapping hands emoji at NYCFC playoff bound, and he included a screenshot. And that screenshot in the tweet is a tweet of NYCFC's tweet saying check plus 3 points after their 1-0 win over the Chicago Fire on Wednesday. And he made sure to include the tweet underneath that, which said Inter Miami CF's account that said Atlanta United pulls ahead Atlanta 2-1 on Miami. So definitely a dig at the team.
And weird because when we first started covering Inter Miami way back 2014, he was always the guy that's like the right hand man, the man behind the beard and all this kind of stuff. And look how 7 years on.
We've got to get to the bottom of that. We got to find more information on that, because if it's that personal, then something's happened along the lines. And he was also the one that reportedly pointed the finger first, like you mentioned, at Inter Miami's breaking of the rules. So there's got to be a lot more to that story.
Masayoshi Son, the other guy that was in the front office, Japanese billionaire, owned SoftBank Industries. He also, he pulled out at the same time. So, and then obviously Beckham and Mas then brought a bigger controlling stake. Maybe there was some element of that. I think that people's sources I spoke to at the club seemed to think that Claret was a sort of strange figure, very divisive. He wasn't liked. So whether or not his link with Paul McDonough and all that kind of stuff, maybe there was a element in there which had sort of troubled the waters there, so to speak. So but you can tell from his tweet that he's bitter and angry or whatever and doesn't care, which is a shame because he was there from the inception. He must have worked really hard in the last 6 or 7 years, or certainly was part of his life. So then towards some change like that is interesting.
We're getting sidetracked here, but I think look, and this is not information, it's just my supposition. I think there probably is more of an issue between him and Jorge Mas, but that's just what I would think from the outside.
No, I think you're correct. I think you're right. Yeah, but other people in the front office were also starting to get sort of detached from him, I think. So
Yeah, but I think the root, if we found out, if we could uncover it, which we should work to do maybe this offseason, is to find out what happened there, because it seems to me like there was some differences opinions or of approaches with regards to Jorge Mas and Marcelo Claure. Like you said, Marcelo Claure was the initially the right hand man for David Beckham in this whole odyssey, and along the way, Jorge Mas became the more prominent local figure, and it more of the input had to go through him apparently, because obviously he was footing a lot of the bill, and maybe that ended up edging out Marcelo Claure or pushing him out of the picture more than he would have liked. But anyway, back to the game this weekend. For Inter Miami, from an Inter Miami standpoint, they're mathematically not dead yet, still alive, but we know the outcome of the season. We know they're not going to get every single result to go their way that they need, and even if they did, they would have to make up a massive goal differential, which it's so big and so significant that it's not going to happen. So do you think Inter Miami goes with the strongest lineup possible, or a very, first choice lineup this week, or this weekend, or do you think that we'll see maybe some younger players in there to maybe try to boost their stocks before the offseason to try to give them a little bit more experience? How do you think Phil Neville and Inter Miami approach what will be their final home game of the 2021 season?
Got to go for it. I think just more of the same. They went their away, obviously, at Atlanta, and he went for that slightly more defensive or system that he'd been using. I think he may revert back to the four at the back and have a go. You've got to have a go, and there's that's it now. Maybe there's a bit of pressure off because realistically they're not going to make it, but just more. But
they've got to go for it. But right, but I'm saying, do you think that they go with their strongest lineup with veteran players like Gonzalo Higuain, Blaise Matuidi, and Rodolfo Pizarro, or do you think he goes with maybe a younger lineup, including the likes of maybe Robbie Robinson back in the starting lineup, Julian Carranza? Because even if you don't see these players longer term, right, like maybe for Robbie Robinson's case, if they want to keep him around, they want to give him some experience. So they could start him if they want to go this younger route. But a player like Julian Carranza, who probably isn't going to stick around, but maybe they want to give him a start to see if he can score goals to help boost his stock before they potentially sell him this offseason, right? So that's my question to you is, do you think they go first choice or as close to first choice starting 11 as possible? Or do you think that they might go with some younger players for experience purposes and for boosting stocks before this offseason to raise their values? So how do you think they go about that?
Good question. I think you just got to go with the best team available, really. I mean, he's seen now over the season what different players can do. We spoke to Carranza before on Monday, wasn't it? And he is a young kid, and we asked about him about his troubles this season and the last couple of years.
You went 2-footed slide tackle on him in that press conference. No. It was a good question. It was a good question, and it was like you said, it had to be asked. Why he hasn't been living up to the expectations he probably had for himself over these last 2 seasons, and obviously he pointed to Gonzalo Higuain being ahead of him in the depth chart.
He pretty much said, I haven't been given a chance. That's kind of what he said. Really, I mean, you could certainly twist it like that in tabloid, language. But,
I think it was more along the lines of Gonzalo Higuain. Although, look, to be fair to you there, it's not like he's been the number 2 option at striker, right? Like Robbie Robinson has gotten more looks at striker from the starting position.
He's been there at the club at 2 years, and he has never really done a great deal. So, and he was highly. We talked about this in the past. Spoke to an agent in Europe that had been, they were keen to sign him and bring him to England. They were really keen on him. Thought he was a great player. So he clearly's got something about him, but
we haven't seen it. We haven't seen it.
Desperate, really, for 2 years and such poor returns, and a guy that's, as we mentioned, also was embroiled in all the sort of the financial problems with Matuidi. He's on nearly $1 million a year, so they're not getting their returns there. You see, that's the problem. But you've got to go with your best team, whoever's available, and really have a go at them.
I think that they will go with their best team, just because of the fact that it is at home. Fans will have spent money to go see a good product, and they will want to be excited and thrilled like they were in the most 2 recent home games, which ended 3-0 and 5-1. So I expect Inter Miami to go to the 4-2-3-1. I expect them to play most of the preferred starting 11. Maybe not Blaise Matuidi. Maybe not, because I don't know if he gives you all that much there. I think Jay Chapman has done a decent enough job when he has been called upon, so maybe not Blaise Matuidi, but I think Higuain should be in the lineup. Federico will probably be in the lineup. and I imagine they'll try to take an attacking posture from the start. Now, what is the key to the game for Inter Miami for you, Primo? What does Inter Miami have to do to give the fans some thrills and some excitement in this last game at home at DraftKings Stadium in 2021?
Score goals and don't let any in. That's the plan. But,
that's the key to any game, brother.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, listen. I think, to be fair, just talk about the fans for a second. I mean, I think the support the team have got, considering how badly they've been at some points of the season, it's been pretty good. I think, really. I think, definitely impressive. The numbers that have shown up and the atmosphere, everything considered. I want to sign off on a high. Just some goals and, a resounding win would be great. But it's the old adage, isn't it? They've got to take their chances and they've got to try and keep them out. I thought defensively they looked pretty solid last night. They were just overrun a bit in the midfield in the second half, and they were creating chances. So just more of the same. And with that, if it goes back to that back four, then maybe that will. Maybe that just promotes them to be a bit attacking. It was kind of safety first last night, but it was working. And then so maybe at home, it got that added impetus to be on the front foot from the start. But you've got to take the game to NYCFC, who are looking pretty good for the playoffs. So they'll probably be content just to sit back and soak it up. They haven't got to go completely crazy. So they're in a good spot right now.
If they do go to four at the back, who is your starting center back tandem?
Yeah, I mean Gonzalez Perez, I thought did pretty well last night. So I think him and McCoon, I think is a decent pairing, don't you think?
I mean, I think they're a decent pairing, but again, if we're taking into consideration the off season, which I'm sure that the team will, then maybe you go Figal and McCoon, or you want to give McCoon continued experience, and you also maybe want to raise Nicolas Figal's stock, get him some more minutes before you potentially sell him this offseason. I think Leandro Gonzalez Pires, I don't think he's going to really raise his stock with another performance. He is what he is in MLS. They know that he's a pretty good center back with a temperament that leads to yellow cards at times. So I don't think playing him necessarily does anything for you in terms of the offseason, but obviously it might give you a better chance to win because he is pretty solid back there. So I think they would go Nicolas Figal and Christian McCoon if they play four at the back. But that's just me here on the outside speaking. On Thursday, we haven't spoken to Phil Neville on Friday yet to get any really insight or any input as to what they might do on Friday, but that's just what I think. Steve, my key to the game for Inter Miami is to go for it and just enjoy and try to deliver an exciting product for the fans so that they can leave the stadium and leave with fun memories of what has been a pretty disappointing season. If you lose, at least you try to thrill and you try to excite. The result pretty much, I mean, it matters. You want to win. I'm not going to say you don't want to win, but given that there's no promotion or relegation, if you lose, it's not the end of the world. You're already practically out of the playoffs anyway, so just try to give the fans some excitement and something to be happy about. If they lose or they lose bad, they would just put a real bad, sour taste in everyone's mouth. Could lead to more boos, and you don't want that to be the last image of DraftKings Stadium in 2021 for Inter Miami. You want to see the fans happy. You want to see the fans with something to smile about. So just try to go for it. If you win, great. If you don't, then, well, you're not making the playoffs anyway. Prediction time, Steve. What does Inter Miami do on Saturday afternoon? On Halloween Eve, where we'll both be there. I hope you bring me some candy. Will Inter Miami win? Will they draw? Will they lose?
I mean, I think
that means they lose. Because if you're sighing, you're not happy. That means you're not convinced that they're going to do it.
I've got no idea how accurate my predictions are, but I always predict them to winning, and it never happens. So I don't know. I think they'll have a go at them, but NYCFC have been, they've shown they're not too bad a team over the course of the season. So I'll a draw, 2-2.
2-2 draw. Okay, it's been my prediction for the last two games. I haven't hit on either. I was close this time, though. Let's see. I will say they have nothing to lose. They can throw numbers forward, but New York City FC is better than them. New York City's fighting for a home playoff game. I want to say a win. Part of me says, Inter Miami could win this one, but I'll say they lose. I say they lose 3-2. 3-2 loss for Inter Miami. at Drive Pink Stadium. Not the greatest result, but again, if you can score 2 goals and make the game exciting, then at least you've held up that part of the bargain. So we'll see how they do. We'll see how Phil Neville approaches it. We'll speak to him on Friday morning, and we'll get more of an idea of how Inter Miami plans to approach things, not only on Saturday, but in the season finale the following week. Steve, let's take another quick break, and we'll come back after that to do the Q&A session, one of our last ones of the 2021 season, surely, so we'll do that after this. Okay, Primo, Q&A time. Let's just jump right into it. There are a few questions, so we've got a few to get through here. CJ is the first one. He says, can any/all of Inter Miami's players loaned out to Fort Lauderdale CF be called back to #PlayTheKids these last 2 games? I'd like to see Acosta and Ascona out there to see what they can do now that the season is virtually over. So I'll answer this one, and I will say that in theory they could call back Ascona. I mean, Ascona is not even, on loan. Ascona is an Inter Miami player that's been on loan to Fort Lauderdale CF. So Ascona could be called into the match day roster, but I don't think it's going to happen in this weekend's game. I think the younger players are going to be given some time off, possibly, and I think it'll just be mostly the veteran team with their one last show or one last hoorah in front of the local fans. So probably the last time you'll see a lot of these players up close and personal because, again, we expect significant changes this winter.
Yeah, I mean, one interesting storyline, I guess, for next season would be probably Harvey Neville, Phil Neville's son, getting promoted up from the USL team into MLS. That would be that'd be interesting. And I think Mabika as well, won't he? Do you think that he'll be?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, next question comes from Don Cafecito. Now that this season is virtually over, somebody else has used the word virtually over, or the words, what are the good, the bad, and the ugly moments for you? Oof. That's a good question. It's a loaded question, but it's a good question. And I think to do it justice, we should save it for our end of season podcast so that we can really just think about it more and dissect it and analyze it a little bit better. Because if we try to think of it right now, I don't think we're going to come up with adequate answers or precise answers. So let's leave that one for the end of the season pod, which will come out in probably a couple of weeks. That cool with you, Steve?
Very cool.
Okay. All right, we'll go to Roberto Rivadeneira. Sorry, Don Cafecito, though. I don't want you to think we're skipping out on your question. I just think it's better to answer at the end of the season when we're focused a little bit more on just the overall totality of the campaign as opposed to still in the thick of different games. But Roberto Rivadeneira comes with the next question. He says, assuming the 3 DPs are out, wouldn't you agree for next season to hire DPs that are 1, a defender, 2nd, a midfielder, and 3rd, a forward? So I would say no. I would say that would not be the approach to take because in MLS, you don't normally sign defenders to DP deals to get maximum value of the 3 designated players. You really need them to be in the midfield and above, like in more advanced positions. So from midfield up, because you can get pretty good defenders on TAM level money. Not that Inter Miami will have a whole lot of that to use next year because of the sanctions, but to really make the most out of your DPs, you need them to be, either strikers, attacking midfielders, wingers. If you really want to go the route of central midfielder, you can, but it's very rare to see defenders signed as designated players as of 2021. Maybe that trend will change in the next 5 years, but I think the route Inter Miami will probably look to take, if they can get rid of all 3, would be striker, attacking midfielder, and a central midfielder. That's what I think Inter Miami will look to do.
Yeah, and it'd be, just on the flip side, it'd be also to see just how they can, what money they can get and how they can move out some of the squad players that they need to move out. The restrictions are going to hit them badly, and that's always going to be hanging over them, I think, moving forward. That that inability to really have a proper. Well, I mean, look, they've still got room to manoeuvre things, but it makes it much more difficult with these sanctions, doesn't it? So I have to wait and see. A lot of phone calls, a lot of wheeling dealing. See what they can work out.
Next question comes from Gabe P. So the commentators narrating the game were telling Phil the problems the team was facing before he even realized it. I think there may be a little problem there. How did they realize 15 minutes before him that our midfield was being run over by Atlanta? I like him, but that's a mistake. Primo, I'll let you start here because you said, that was part of your analysis, that you saw Inter Miami's midfield getting overrun in that second half. So, what do you think with regards to Phil's analysis and management of the game in that second half?
I guess you could have shored it up in the second half a bit once they were on the back foot. But as we said, I still felt they were in the game for most of it, and he knew that if they get a chance, then the chances were going to come. So it's I don't think they did too much wrong tactically, man. As we've said, it was just they just didn't take the chances. That was it. Even if they would have gone ahead early on, it was the first time that Atlanta had come back from being a goal down at half time to win a game all season. So they were kind of there for the taking. You think if they get an early goal, then they can get another one. Yes, they were ahead, but didn't take the chances.
Right, but there was a moment and a spell in that second half. On the rewatch, and I watched it back with my brother, I noted to him, I was like, they're losing the control of the game. Because there was a segment, or a period, a stretch in that second half where Atlanta starts finding more success with the ball and started wrestling whatever control Inter Miami had in the game, away from it. And that's when Inter Miami started to struggle a bit. So, look, could Phil have gone to his bench sooner or made some adjustments? Absolutely. And look, none of the substitutions that he made really impacted the game for the better. Federico Higuain came on and was involved. Indiana Vassilev showed some energy. Carranza didn't do all that much, and Robbie Robinson obviously wasn't great. So, his substitutions weren't the best in this one. We've given him credit when the subs have come in and made an impact and won games or helped make the difference. In this one, they weren't even close to doing that. Well, maybe Robinson was close, but they just didn't get it done at the end of the day. So, you definitely can criticize Phil Neville from certain standpoints, but again, I don't think that the loss is on him. I think the loss is on just the team not finishing chances, and obviously Phil Neville can't go on the field and put his shoes on and score for the team. That's that just comes down to finishing, and you would expect players like Gonzalo Higuain to put the ball into the back of the net with the chances that he got, and even someone like Robbie Robinson, not a $1 million man or a $5 million man, but still the chance he had with that header, that has to be put into the back of the net. Next question comes from Twitter. As a hockey and soccer fan, why is the plus-minus stat not really used in soccer? Team goal differential is -16, and we have Matuidi with a -26 plus-minus while being 5th in minutes played. Gregory is -6, being 4th in matches played. Morgan is -12, being 1st in matches played. Higuain, -14 with 3rd. Pizarro, -11 with 9th. We need more Gregorys. So I don't know why that's not used. If all those numbers are correct, I'm glad you did the legwork there, because that I can't imagine was too easy, unless it's laid out somewhere else. But Steve, why is that stat not used more in soccer?
I don't know. You kind of stumped me. I don't even know what stat you're talking about.
It's essentially what the goal differential is when you're on the field, I believe, right? Like they use it in basketball and they use it in hockey to see how effective the team is when you're on the field. I don't think it necessarily paints a great picture. Maybe in basketball, because there's only 5 players per team, and maybe in hockey too.
It's not XG though. The expected goals.
No. This is that's why he's saying as a hockey fan. Why is
okay? That's fair enough. No, I have to. That's interesting. I have to do some homework and have a look at that.
I think there's just too many variables. I think there's just too many players. There's 11 on each team. It's not like you see the same 11 like you might see the same 5 in basketball on the field on a consistent basis over the course of a season. So I think maybe that's one of the reasons. Maybe it's not a part of regular football lingo, but that's just my thoughts here. Next question comes from Talk Inter Miami CF. Can we still be proud we stayed in the playoff race until the near end after the New England disaster? Primo, I'll let you start there.
Yes, I think and you'll jump in here and say, "Oh no, this is much better."
You know me so well, my friend.
I think there have been more high points this season than last season.
Wow.
More hopes of kind of optimism that they're kind of on the right track.
Wow.
Do you not think that? Maybe because it's just newer and I just forgotten about the Diego Alonso year and just moved on. Unlike you, unable to move on from it.
Maybe because a certain Englishman is the head coach, your compatriot?
No.
No.
All the little chats with tactics on YouTube or whatever you were doing with him. I don't know. There have been some good moments and there have been some bad moments, just like there were kind of last season. But I don't know, it kind of felt a little bit more together this season. I don't think that could be disputed than it was at the back end of last season when we were saying it's a mess behind the scenes and stuff was happening.
More together this year? No way.
I think so as a club.
I don't know. Man.
It's not as fractured as it was. No, look, if you go back, I mean, this.
The question is, can we still be proud that the team stayed in the playoff race until the near end after that 5-0 loss to the New England Revolution? Look, I would say no. Proud. I don't think proud is the word.
Proud's not the word.
I think you could maybe look back on that and say, look, the team improved significantly right after that. And showed some good things, and that's where Phil Neville, kudos to him for making the tactical adjustments that led to improved results. But I don't think proud is the word, because the team is still in 11th place in the Eastern Conference. It's not even like this. And look, then the fact that they're in the playoff race to this point in the season, so this late in the year, is just a byproduct of the MLS's structure. It's just the parity that exists in the league. Because let's be honest, Inter Miami, except for maybe one moment in that good run of form, was never really above the playoff line. The team has been playing catch-up almost the entire season, and even during this spell, before they even lost, they were still trying to play catch-up and still trying to get above the red line. So I don't think proud is the word. I don't think fans should be proud by what they saw of the team. There's certain things that you could be pleased with seeing that happened, and that maybe will give you signs for optimism next year, but I don't think proud is the word. That's just me, though.
Reason to believe that things could potentially get better, I think it's a failure for them to, especially in a 14-team division. 14 teams?
Yes.
Yeah. To not finish in the top 7 is not good enough. Absolutely not good enough. I mean, you look at some of the other teams and whatever, and I don't know the investment they've made here, but I don't know. Money doesn't, come into it too much, but definitely got to be within the top 7. Very poor to have not made the playoffs, and when it's so close as well. New England is probably the only team out of.
But it's only close because of the parity that MLS forces in the league.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, Inter Miami
makes it worse.
Yeah, but Inter Miami, and look, part of the reason why they even stayed this late too, and this is just to expand on my previous response. Part of it is because of the unbalanced schedule that exists, because there are still some teams that have a game in hand on Inter Miami right now, and that's helped Inter Miami stay in the picture longer, because if everyone had played the same amount of games, the same amount of times, or at the same time, then Inter Miami would have been eliminated probably a week ago, or maybe even 2. The fact that there's just such an imbalance in the schedule is part of the reason why Inter Miami is still, even till now, mathematically alive. There are teams that will play next Wednesday, whereas Inter Miami will have that Wednesday off. So, that's part of the reason as well. But again, for me, 11th place with a better roster, I don't think there's much to be proud about there. There were good moments, absolutely, and I would say you could look back on those moments fondly and say that was exciting or that was good, and that's something that can be built on. But proud, I don't think proud's the word. Last question comes from Elder Bar, and he has 2 tweets here, and one's directed directly at you, Steve. So I'll start with the first one. Inter Miami has a better than good roster. It lacks consistency. Marsman never has a constant center back pairing in front, and no trust in players to play with more up top. Anyways, is Inter Miami pressuring DPs and targeted allocation money players to quit? Is that the sense you get? If so, will the Players Association intervene? And the second part is also, Primo, if you want England to win a cup, then Southgate has to go. Trust me, these coaches don't know what they have. They turn Ferraris into Priuses.
Well, you can go first with the MLS technicality question.
Well, look, are they pressuring DPs and TAMs into quitting? I don't know that. I don't have that information. But look, things happen behind the scenes all the time in professional sports, and MLS is no exception, where teams and clubs try to, I'm trying to find the right word here, try to force other players' hands or force moves that benefit the team's best interest. And I think that's just par for the course. Obviously, it has to be done within, I imagine, some type of structure, and I can't imagine they could just do anything to try to get a player to not want to come back. But I imagine there's some element to that, absolutely. But that's just my supposition. That is not information. Let me make that clear. I know people that work for the team and that are in and around the club listen to this podcast. So that's just my supposition on the outside. That is not information, so don't take that as Franco Panizo's reporting. I'm just saying I can imagine that does happen to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, when money's involved and agents are around, and there's going to be a lot of discussions now. They're trying to draw up their battle plan for next season, hamstrung by the fact that they still haven't, they're without that money. So yeah, they're manoeuvring. That's what Chris Henderson's job is to maneuver the players in and out. So calls are made, and
the rules are bent. The rules are bent. As long as you don't break them, like Inter Miami did, then you're fine. But the rules do get bent. And I don't listen. Soccer, football, you know this, especially in other parts of the world where there's not all these rules and stuff. Football is a dirty business. Football is a dirty business.
It's like any agent, in any sport, in any agent, you speak to agents. Basketball, absolutely. NFL, they're all the same. Watch Ballers. You see I don't know if anyone's watched Ballers. The agent in there is brilliant. That's just what it's like. It's the agent is going to get a cut, and the club's going to get a cut as well. And it's just moving and shaking. We'll try and get some agents on one time to talk through. It could be quite interesting.
All right. As for the Southgate has to go from England.
He's been the most successful manager we've had since 1966, for over 55 years. And he's brought through some players. He's come through the England system. Was England under 21 manager. Then I think he's done a great job. But the World Cup, they've got to. I think getting to the World Cup final will really probably be their main aim, and then after that, who knows? But I think they could have won the Euros if they were just a little bit more positive. So hopefully, they may have drawn from that. But England, for once, have actually got a squad of really good players, young players as well. And I think he's done a great job, but he needs to win something, just like they all do.
Okay, well, that does it for the Q&A session. Steve, give us your final thoughts. I will give mine, and we will wrap up the second pod of this week after that.
Yeah, listen, it's been a bit of a slog of the season recently. It's been quite difficult for the team to just keep this playoff alive, run alive, when they really knew that those two bad winless runs has really cost them. But it's a shame. It's a real shame. But just be interested to see how they go about the last couple of games, and then I'm more interested actually in the preseason, just to see how they're going to try and reshape everything and restructure it, and who's going to go out, and is Gonzalo going to hang up his boots? So yeah. Disappointment, but then interesting to see what happens next.
My final thought is on the reaction to what has now pretty much cemented Inter Miami status this season. How is David Beckham going to respond to this? How is Jorge Mas going to respond to this? Because even with the new head coach in Phil Neville coming in, even with new players coming in, Inter Miami and Jorge Mas said publicly they wanted to be a team that finished in the top 3 in the Eastern Conference. And they have a roster that's more talented than 11th place. And maybe they don't finish in 11th, maybe they finish in 10th. We'll see how the next 2 games play out. But Inter Miami will fall well short of expectations. And I imagine we will talk to some of the leadership in the postseason, end of season availability and interviews that we get, and I'm very curious to hear what they have to say about the season, because this is unacceptable for a team that is so ambitious, and I don't think anyone saves themselves from the blame, from the criticism. There's a lot of questions to be asked about the state of this season, how they move on from here because of the sanctions, and hopefully we get those answers sooner rather than later, where as last year, which I thought was very unacceptable, we did not speak to leadership at the end of the season, and we didn't speak to them until the start of essentially preseason for this 2021 campaign. So hopefully we do get that opportunity. I imagine we will. I don't imagine that they will do that again. Very curious to hear those remarks. But That does it for this week's second pod. We thank you guys again so much for listening again and sticking with us here through, obviously, a rough finish to the campaign. There's still 2 games to play. Maybe Inter Miami can go off on a high note, even if they don't make the playoffs, but we'll see how they do. We'll be back again next week to recap and review this game against New York City FC and preview the season finale against the New England Revolution. We hope you guys have a happy Halloween. Hope you got your costumes ready. Let us know or send us your pictures if you're going to dress up as an Inter Miami player or as Steven Primo Brenner. That would be funny to see. But thank you guys so much for listening. For Steve Brenner, I am Franco Panizo. This is Miami Total Football Radio, and we'll talk to you guys again very, very soon.